agreement. Mr. Huckleberry, real property. This is connecting to this project.
Madam Chair, members of the board, as we indicated to the board in adopting the final budget, we were in discussions to acquire a particular portion of property south of Interstate 10, but adjacent to our existing Kino Sports Complex, about 167 acres. The owner has agreed to a term acquisition with approximately $1.75 million as a down payment, and the balance to be paid over 5 years. This is an actual acquisition agreement, a contract with that owner. It's placed on the board's agenda for approval. We had some earlier discussions with regard to environmental hazards associated with the property. We had provided information to the board regarding an environmental assessment completed in 2012. Recently that was updated as of last Friday. The property remains free of environmental contamination of any sort, and therefore we're recommending this acquisition to the board. I also provided the board with a memorandum yesterday because I believe the confusion associated with how the general fund payment for the first installment payment would be made through the budget. And what I'm recommending to you is that it be earmarked from the excess fiscal year 13-14 fund balance that our preliminary estimates are today that we will have at least $2 to perhaps as much as slightly over $3 million excess fund balance over that was actually budgeted for fiscal year 13-14. So that's the recommendation I'm making to you.
Madam Chair, Supervisor Miller. I'd just like to bring up that I've been doing some research, and the EPA, the Phase 1 environmental study, is only valid for 1 year after completion, and that they don't allow, after 1 year it becomes obsolete and you have to do a complete new Phase 1 environmental assessment. Is that being done?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, it was completed and delivered to our offices Friday, the 27th of June, and it still shows no contamination.
So they have a 2014 Phase 1 assessment completed?
Yes.
Okay, because we didn't get a copy of that we asked for. And then some other questions I have. I spoke to a gentleman named Don Schumacher, who is the executive director of the nonprofit National Associations of Sports Commissions, and asked him about his experience in the industry. And he is a leader in analyzing financial and market analysis when municipalities consider sports complexes. And what he told us was that many local governments have shown they have good intent in the idea of financing sports complexes, but it is essential that they first invest in doing an independent feasibility study, which includes a full market analysis and financial analysis before they do anything else. He also said it was imperative the teams stay in hotels within 5 miles of the site, and they need a variety of retail shopping opportunities, restaurants right nearby, preferably within walking distance, and the hotels should have a single entrance to avoid the use of older style individual room entries from the parking lot, as this is a security issue for youth events and teams. And one of the things that I brought this up in the last meeting, this is going to amount to a $10 million investment with taxpayer dollars, and then we have to invest in building the fields, which you're estimating to be 35 to 45 million. And I was out looking at that parcel on Sunday, and there were individuals out there cleaning it up with wheelbarrows. And one of the things that I noted was that to get from the Kino Sports Complex to this particular parcel is going to be extremely difficult and very costly, because we're going to have to either build a bridge over the freeway or do some sort of underpass that is going to be very expensive. And this is one of the reasons that I think we need to look at this very carefully, because if we don't get a bond pass next year, and based upon all of the things I've been reading and individuals I've been talking to, the voters don't have a taste for a new bond issue, especially 500 to 600 million. And we just got a letter in yesterday from a group that's going to actually actively work against that bond. Then we're going to be again looking at a tax increase for the next 5 years to pay these payments on this parcel of land, and we will not have the money to develop it. So we will take this piece of dirt off the tax rolls, which I believe right now we're getting about 66,000 a year in tax income, and we will have nothing but a piece of dirt. This is my concern, is that without that bond passing, we will put further burden on the taxpayers in the primary budget. And as I said before, that makes it very difficult to support this because of the cost. Thank you.
You know, Madam Chair,
Supervisor Lee.
I know we have some speakers that are here to speak to this issue, but I did want to respond to that because, you know, frankly, the egress and ingress issue is not an issue. It'd be very feasible to put egress and ingress out onto Kino and make it very accessible to people.
You
In fact,
actually have egress now.
right, correct. We have egress now, but ingress is important, obviously. And you know, underneath the Interstate 10 and Ahoway, there is a wash that exists under there. We could create a very nice greenway for people to be able to walk underneath both those structures from the other parts of the Kino Sports Complex that would frankly make it very efficient and very nice for people as well. The opportunity for hotels and other types of entertainment venues there on site, there's plenty of room for that. Actually, I think that area is primed for that, and I think the area would be very happy to have some additional services available to them like that. Is this a few years off? Yes. But if you don't have vision, you don't have creativity, then you don't have money-making places in our community that are going to make a big difference in improving the quality of life. And frankly, you know, support for the bond election has been pretty broad. I know that Supervisor Miller is you know, sounded off numerous times in the last 6 months that she probably will be opposed to the bond. So I understand her creating a narrative that she's just described here. And I would say that you have to have strength, you have to have courage, and you have to have vision for your community and for your youth to be able to grow and be healthy and make money and find something positive in life. And frankly, soccer has been very positive for the children of Tucson, for businesses here in Tucson, and we see the future as being very bright in this area. And I just wanted to respond to that because I tell you, that's we can be really negative if we want about anything. We can create that. People do that regularly. I mean, I listen to them sometimes on the radio, rant on and on for hours and hours with all kinds of fantasies. But that doesn't make them true. So I'd like to hear from our speakers, and I think that we could then consider this item and vote. But let's hear from our speakers.
Madam Chair?
Excuse me, Mr. Huckleberry first.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the board. We've also been contacted, and I know I had an email was sent to the chair of the board from the operators of what is called the Grand Park in Indianapolis, Indiana. And that's a 35 field soccer complex as well as about 30 baseball fields. And they're in the process of building a 300,000 square foot indoor soccer facility, and one of the principals of that firm who flies back and forth to Indianapolis lives in Tucson, and they've contacted us and would be glad to lend their expertise in guiding the ultimate potential public-private partnership on developing this particular facility. In the county, obviously in the acquisition, we're acquiring the lands for the soccer complex. We're also acquiring the land that has frontage in its own commercial on Kino for potentially the hotel sites and restaurant sites. The county won't own or develop those, we'll either lease or sell them, and there's statutory processes to do that for any individuals who want to then create the environment for the hotel restaurant complex that has to support this type of facility. So I don't think we're going to go off and do anything, we'll say, dramatic with regard to the property without some great deal of study and effort, including all of the feasibility studies I think I've even referenced. We're going to make sure that we do this very carefully and in a manner that basically maximizes the benefit of the property to the community from a economic development tourism perspective, but also serves the youth and amateur sports components in this community that are presently underserved.
Thank you. Supervisor Miller.
I'd just like to say that, you know, I appreciate the fact that we're going to do these studies, but it's just with the current situation that we're in, and that we cannot even afford to fix our roads. We're $1.4 billion in debt, and to continue piling on to the taxpayers. And as I said, Supervisor Elias says I'm creating a narrative. This is not me creating the narrative. This is what I'm hearing from my constituents, and I'm hearing it loudly and clearly. And I believe this is going to be a huge issue, the fact that we bought this land, and it's going to be years out into the future. And right now, we're in desperate situation in terms of the money that we have, and we should be prioritizing, focusing on core essential services versus soccer fields, which are nice to have, but we can't afford. Thank you.
Yes, Supervisor Miller, thank you. Let me remind you, we don't need to be repetitive. I believe you pretty much made those points in the beginning. And with that, I'll call the speakers. Jerry Audubon.
Madam Chairman of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Jerry Ottoboni and I live in Oro Valley. I checked and discovered that we have approximately 60 soccer fields in Pima County. Oro Valley is building 4 more. Reito Racetrack had some which were included in on the 60, and you, the board, voted to build some more soccer fields, and I just learned today that that's going to be 3 more soccer fields. I heard a gentleman on the radio who puts national tournaments together, and he stated that he needed 36 soccer fields. So we have really more than we need. I looked at the agenda and noted that the vote for the Huckleberry soccer field near the freeway using road repair money is today. I'm delighted Mr. Carroll's voting no today, since on the radio he stated that he had already voted no on the soccer fields last meeting. That was not a soccer field vote. So Supervisor Carroll, lead the charge today and vote a no vote for the soccer fields and the property, because we have enough soccer fields, and thank you.
A point of order for the record. A point of order for the record, and then Mr. Carroll. The proposal today has nothing to do with road money. It is fund balance money, so we need to correct that for the record. Supervisor Carroll.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Madam Chair, when Mr. Elias said earlier that maybe Supervisor Miller is beginning to try to lead the dialogue or change the discussion, I do want to make a point. Last year when you were here, or last week when you were here at the meeting, it is very clear that when it was possible that there was going to be $5 million in the transportation department from the general fund, and there was to take money from that to buy the soccer fields, I protested. I protested vigorously. I also have said that with our experience, it's vital that we respect the districts 2 and 5 for the fact that they've been contributing to the other 3 districts since their jurisdictions didn't spend that $5 million that was put in the general fund, taken from the general fund to transportation. So I want to make it clear that I do not support it in that way. The $5 million, thanks to Mr. Huckleberry looking in other areas, is going to remain intact for the transportation paving pavement preservation projects. And I want to thank you very much for allowing me to make sure I delineate the reason from last week why I protested the idea of taking the $5 million from transportation, and why I clarify now, because there's been a lot of misinformation put out, and out of context information that we've been obviously used to in Pima County, that says that I was supportive, even out of the transportation money. But because of the last speaker and because of some other comments made, I just want to make sure that my position is clear and that no one fills in gaps that says that I was for the $5 million being transferred from general fund, not to transportation, pavement preservation, but only part to transportation and part to soccer. So thank you for bringing it up. I know you're distracted often in the stands, but it's nice to be able to have a chance to really clear the air and let you know that I'm not in support of the soccer fields from the transportation funding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Carroll. Now to Natasha Lilly, and I cannot read your last name, so my apologies.
My name is Natasha Lily Nolan.
Nolan, okay, thank you.
When I decided to come and speak before you, I asked myself 3 questions. The first question was how does soccer affect me and my family? What is a day of soccer life? What is a day of soccer for our lives? And why would be adding fields to Kino would be important to me and my family. My first question, how soccer affects me and my family. My husband and I have 4 boys that play or played soccer. 2 of our sons still play, and my nephew who lives with our family all play in the Tucson area. Our 3 remaining boys would like to continue playing after high school. We have a player who has a chance to play beyond college. Because of these desires, this means GPA, homework, and extracurricular activities, including volunteering in the community, almost daily conversations that we have in the car to and from practice. The boys practice during the soccer season 3 days a week, 2 hours a day, and games on Saturday with possible games on Sunday nights too. Not only do our boys play, they have coached players younger than themselves, and they have rep AYSO games in our home region of Green Valley, Sarita, as well as Tucson. We believe in keeping our boys busy with other pursuits besides TV, video games, and a lot worse, hanging out in the streets. Because the boys play a sport, they are busy and with other like-minded individuals and families who hold the similar values as ours. They are exposed to many different types of people from many different backgrounds, and because of this, my husband and I believe that our boys will have a better rounded future.
And I'm going to just interrupt you briefly and remind you, you've got 3 minutes, and I know you have a lot to say, so.
Okay. With the 3 boys and 3 different soccer teams, I'm usually driving back and forth, and like I said, I live in Sarita, Green Valley, so it's a huge time commitment. But I really want to tell you this. I've traveled all over the Southwest watching my children play, and because of this, I've witnessed many soccer fields, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We show up to games where the field is a mud pit, the field is crowned in the center so the surface isn't even and the ball rolls. There are gopher holes that cause sprained ankles and while players are playing. We have practice on fields that are dirt and straw, with children having asthma attacks after practice and not being able to return to school or practices for days after. Due to a limited number of lighted fields and overcrowded now, because of the light, there's overcrowding and poor conditions. The additional soccer fields will be beneficial not just to my family, but to all the families that drive up from Sarita to Green Valley, Amado, Rio Rico, and Nogales. These fields will provide training and games that are closer and easier to access by I-19, I-10. They will also provide the community with a safe place to practice their games. This is much bigger than my boys. Giving young men and women of Tucson fields that are in good condition will benefit many.
Thank you very much. Brian Conley.
Thank you. That was pretty good timing, huh?
No, it's perfect.
I support the purchase of the land for the soccer fields. My name is Brian Conley. I'm a native Tucson. I went to Southland Catholic High School here in Tucson. I attended the University of Arizona, received my degree. I'm currently a businessman who is very aware of the Tucson economy. I I grew up playing soccer and I've always been aware of the limitations and locations of the soccer fields. I have 2 young kids now, 2 young children that love to play soccer, and I hope they have the opportunity to play soccer on quality fields here in Pima County. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then finally, Greg Foster.
Good morning.
Can we have your prognostication for the score of the USA game?
I-
As well, Greg.
I believe that we will win. I got no score for you, but I believe we will win. That's consuming some of my 3 minutes. Thank you. And for anyone who doesn't know, it's at 1 o'clock today, and please find yourself in front of a TV screen and supporting the U.S. Madam Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, all of you know that I'm a managing member of FC Tucson. I'm also a board member of Fort Lowell Soccer Club. I've been involved in youth soccer here as a player since 1980 and as a parent since about 2000. I think all I can really comment upon today is the utility of these fields from a youth standpoint and from a professional and spectator standpoint. I think to set the table, it's important to understand where we are in terms of the field sport, and more particularly the soccer industry. Between 1990 and today, the number of players registered in organized youth soccer has doubled in the United States to 4 million. Today, soccer is the second most popular sport for those between the ages of 12 and 24 years of age. Soccer is the 3rd largest participation sport in the country. It is the team sport with the highest growth rate over the past decade. 41% of participating soccer players are women. As a spectator sport, total attendance in the United States last year, 2013, reached 10 million. In the U.S., the U.S. is now the largest market in the world for international matches. These facts are really, I think, very relevant to the idea of developing additional fields in a complex that the county is considering. A complex of this size, when combined with our climate, access and visibility to Interstate 10, and the central location of the Kino Sports Complex, will give Tucson a significant competitive advantage over existing complexes in the Southwest, both with regard to attracting youth events, amateur events, and professional events. Local soccer clubs like Fort Lowell Soccer Club, Tucson Soccer Academy, CBO, and FC Tucson will be able to expand existing events and attract more youth and professional teams. Kino Sports Complex and proposed soccer fields at Retail Park will allow our community to land regional and national youth field sports events. Right now, we already have evidence of this happening based on the investments we've made. The Fort Lowell Shootout currently hosts approximately 350 youth teams at their tournament. Additional high-quality fields will ensure that the tournament remains viable and can grow. The current economic impact year over year with the Fort Lowell Shootout has been measured at $3.1 million. MLS preseason, the initial county investment in Kino has been fantastic. It's yielded 5 training fields in the stadium field. However, MLS is developing guidelines that provide that Major League Soccer teams should have 2 training fields available per team during the preseason. If that becomes a standard, and of course FC Tucson is working to avoid that standard, but if it does become the standard, that means that we as a community will only be able to host 2 to 3 Major League Soccer teams at a time at Kino, and the only fields in our community that are even close to the standard required for this are the fields that the county has built at Kino.
Your time has expired. Can I ask you to wrap up?
I apologize. Each 2 to 3 week, 2 week stay by an MLS team yields direct spending of $250,000. That adds up quickly if you get to 10 or 11 teams. Also, we would be able, with the additional fields, to attract the U.S. Soccer's Region 4 championships. Albuquerque just did that this year. They projected a $4.7 million direct spend for tourism in that event. That's $10 million from just 3 events that a complex like this would be able to support. Pima County's made important investments in soccer fields in the last 2 years. These investments have attracted national attention in sports tourism. The additional fields this land purchase would make possible. It would really help our community grow these events and attract them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. The Supervisor Valadez?
Correct.
No, I couldn't see whether it was, which one? Sorry.
I don't sound like him.
I'm sorry, you made me lose my composure
Yeah,
for a little
and
bit.
then, and I think he appreciates that fact.
I'm sure he does.
Madam Chair, let me start by saying that last week we had the first installment of this discussion, and we talked about a number of things, and we talked about it in context of what priorities we were setting in terms of a budget. And today we're finding a source of money that negates part of the discussion that has been brought about, where claims have been made that erroneously the general fund monies are automatically transportation monies. But that having been said, I would tell you, and I'll try and make this brief, that, you know, if we were doing this for another professional baseball team, I'll tell you, I probably wouldn't be supporting this. We learn from, frankly, the past and history that we become subject to the whims of money. This isn't about money. This is about investment. This is about whether or not we want to have our kids and our families doing something productive, something that is fun, something that they can grow from, or whether we want to look at the alternative. And the alternative isn't good. It is across the street from the northern state, or from Ahaway, in the juvenile detention. And if that's the option that some people support, then great. I think they're wrong. I think that we need to look at this very clearly and very easily as an investment in our kids, in our families, in our community. And if you choose to look at the alternative as being the side you support, then so be it. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and move the approval of item number 43 and the direct staff to use the excess fund balance from the fiscal year 13-14 for the down payment.
Second.
Motion and a second. I would ask Mr. Huckleberry, I'm going to do a roll call vote on this, but I believe that Supervisor Miller has raised some issues and they need responses, and I'd like to see those responses. What is the demand for soccer fields, youth soccer fields? What is the economic benefit? And what pro formas or what research have we done to indicate that this is a step, it's a necessary step we need to take, and take it now. And with that, roll call.
Supervisor Carroll?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Carroll.
before I vote, I'd like to say clearly there was some misunderstanding last week, and maybe it was a twisting of the truth, or maybe it was just a distracted mind. But I do want to say, it needs to be clarified and said twice, because we truly believe in Pima County that truth is important, and I want to make sure this doesn't get misconstrued. The monies for the soccer fields will be coming from where, Mr. Huckleberry?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Carroll, they will come from the excess fund balance left over from the 2013-14 budget, in excess of that was actually budgeted the previous year.
I hope that's not taken out of context later. Let me say again, the monies then that are going to be possibly transferred into the transportation for pavement preservation are still intact, even though this vote will happen today.
Yes, Madam Chair and Supervisor Carroll, I've already previously directed the Department of Transportation to begin again planning for the expenditure of those funds in pavement preservation on the arterial and collector system and coming back to the board in December of 2015 for the spring and summer season of pavement preservation within the county.
Thank you so much, because I know the minutes for the meeting that was this was last discussed that are not prepared yet. I just want to make sure that we had something for on the record for people that are out in the audience or people that are working on staff or anywhere else are clear as to where the dollars are coming from. And I look forward to talking about the transportation funding issue later in the year. I also want to add my comment then and now.
Point
But
of
I
order,
look
Madam
forward to
Chair,
seeing-
you called a question.
I did not call the question.
Okay.
I had the floor, I think. Appreciate that. Again, I will now say that it's important for all of us to begin to look at, in preparation for the meeting to talk about pavement preservation in the future, that we look at building equity for all 5 districts. So in the future, this type of debate originally leading to the misunderstanding and to the rearrangement of how this is going to be paid for doesn't happen again. Maybe it was intentional, maybe it was confused, but I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Your vote.
Supervisor Elias.
Yes.
Supervisor Miller.
No.
Supervisor Valadez.
Aye.
Chair Bronson.
Aye, motion carries 3-2. And now we move back to the regular agenda.